Hi everyone, welcome to Carolina's Book Talks, and today I'm going to be book talking David and Goliath, Underdogs, Misfits, and the Art of Battling Giants by Malcolm Gladwell. So before I get started on book talking and giving you some read-alikes for this book, let me go over a little bit of the genre, which is business and economics and nonfiction. So some of the levels of variety that you can find within this genre are some authors who are presenting their own research versus those who are presenting a collection of other people's research, as well as history, some memoirs, essays, and interviews. Some books can be on the very descriptive and analytical side, very heavy on the business and economics jargon, or even the science jargon. However, there's the other side of that, which is a little bit more of a anecdotal storytelling type format. It's a little bit lighter. So that would kind of be where Malcolm Gladwell would fit in. I have noticed that it's predominantly journalists who kind of write in this format. So some of the significant authors in this genre are Stephen R. Covey, who is the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Charles Duhigg, the author of Smarter, Better, Faster, Chris Anderson, and James Collins. So some of the appeal factors for this genre are the ability to learn and experience things that might be outside of your purview. So for example, if we take myself, I was always very interested in business and economics, thought it was fascinating. So in university, I tried to take a class and failed miserably at it. But I'm still very interested in these concepts, and being able to read guys like Malcolm Gladwell makes this information more accessible to people like me. Another appeal factor, depending on the reason why you're reading these books, could be they're supporting a point of view that you have, or on the other side of that, you are someone who likes to have their point of view challenged and to grow as a person and expand. And lastly, more specifically for books that I'm going to talk about today, is the understanding of how to attain success. So, David and Goliath. You can't even imagine how deeply moving this book is, which might be odd to say because it's nonfiction, right? And it's in business and economics. The way that Gladwell writes is so riveting that I'm not even sure if he's actually bringing up extraordinary things or if he's writing kind of maybe boring concepts that are in such an extraordinary way. So when we're talking about things like nonfiction, I find that's it's hard because there's no plot, there's no characters. So what I like to do is give a takeaway, something that was really sticky. If you've ever heard of this as stickiness factor, something that is you'll remember forever. There's a lot of those in this book, but specifically, have you ever thought about dyslexia? Perhaps someone you know has it, or you have it, a friend of a friend, or you've heard some chatter about it here and there. So dyslexia has always been seen as a disadvantage to children because suddenly they need to work harder to attain the same things as their peers. But did you know that a lot of top business people and CEOs in the world have dyslexia? Interesting, right? So that fits in with the theme here of disadvantages essentially being advantages. So these business people had to heighten other senses or create new ways in order to accomplish their work, which essentially made them accomplish more or accomplish better. So one of these business people are being interviewed in this book, and it's very interesting that he's pondering about his children now, because he's a CEO of whatever company, his children have all what we would consider the advantages of money and education. However, they're not faring as well as he has. And he asks Malcolm Gladwell, you wouldn't wish dyslexia on your child, or would you? And some people might think that is kind of a touchy subject, but it's very interesting to start viewing the world not as we have been told to view it, and that something that's considered a disadvantage can actually be an advantage and make someone more successful. So Gladwell turns your whole worldview upside down by presenting you little vignettes like this. And it's in such an engaging way that you end up asking for more. And let me tell you, this was the first Malcolm Gladwell book that I read. And after that, I went out and got all of the rest. So now I'm going to give you a few read-alikes for David and Goliath. I don't have a physical copy of this one because I listened to it as an audiobook, but it's Think Like a Freak by Stephen J. Dubner, who's a journalist, and Stephen R. Levitt, who's an economist. And they're the authors of Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics. Think Like a Freak is the third one in the series, but it doesn't really matter in which way you read them. So Stephen and Stephen, there's a lot of Stevens in this genre. Stephen and Stephen want you to think outside the box, which some people might say, like, hey, we've been talking about that forever now. It's like not that new of a concept. But in reality, the two Stevens, they do it in such an engaging way. And I think that it's because with the help of Stephen J. Dubner, who's a journalist, it's written in the same format of anecdotal, like little stories that are pooled together in order to form this like umbrella topic of success, similarly to David and Goliath. So a lot of the time when you think about business and economics, we think, interest rates and productivity, but that's considered macroeconomics. So all the books here that I'm book talking are more considered with microeconomics, which are at the individual level. So how we act and react to the world and how that impacts the economy and whatnot. So the authors of Think Like a Freak believe that we're asking the wrong questions, and that if we change those questions, they might better fit the answers that we're getting. So another stickiness factor from Think Like a Freak is a little vignette about a gentleman who wants to enter a hot dog eating contest, but everybody has always been asking how like that they need to eat more than what was the last amount, which was like 25 hot dogs. But this gentleman changed the question to be, how do I eat more hot dogs? Not how do I beat that number, but how do I eat more hot dogs? It's a very small change, but in reality, he ended up looking at it as how does he change the way in which he eats in order to like breaking the hot dogs apart or dousing them in water, that kind of thing. And he ended up surpassing his competition by a long shot. So through a collection of little stories, Think Like a Freak opens your eyes to the potential success that can be achieved if we are concerned with ourselves rather than others. And what I like a lot is that they really emphasize more towards the end that if you begin to see quitting not as a failure, but as a potential for more success. So it's a really good book. And it's really good to listen to. Both David and Goliath and Think Like a Freak are on audiobooks, and they're both read by authors. Think Like a Freak is read by Stephen J. Dubner, and I feel like it's a lot better whenever the author is reading it because they know every little emphasis, and they have that passion behind what they've written. So the next book that I'm going to book talk is Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance by Angela Duckworth. So you might be happy or you might not to know that it's necessary to have more than intrinsic talent to succeed in this world. And Angela Duckworth, she's a psychologist, so this is a little bit heavier on the psychology jargon, but it's written in the same format of anecdotal. However, it's her own research, but still written in the little stories one after the other. So she's been studying the determination and stamina of grit behind the success of people. So usually we expect that the world is kind of divvied into two types of people. There's the Darwins, the Einsteins, and the Teslas over here, and then there are those who are not. And that's just, you're born that way or you're not. But being born with talent will only get you so far, as per Angela Duckworth's research. And I love that she's actually an example of this. It makes me love her more, because in her preface she describes a childhood with a father who would constantly say to her, well, you're no genius, and she admits that he was right, that she was not. She didn't really seem to be extraordinary when she was a child, but despite her lack of the genius gene that she has called it, she has now been awarded the MacArthur Fellowship, which is also commonly known as the Genius Grant, and it's all thanks to Grit, the book, and the thing itself. So the next book, as a read-alike for David and Goliath, is Mad Like Tesla, Underdog Inventors and the Relentless Pursuit of Clean Energy by Tyler Hamilton. So Tyler Hamilton is a Canadian journalist in the tech and science industry. So this is a lot heavier on the tech and science jargon. It's not written anecdotally, but why it's a read-alike for David and Goliath is because it's still, the underlying theme of this is success, and the fact that a lot of that failure cannot be seen as failure, but in reality as success. So let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of a black swan? So if you haven't, a black swan is an unpredictable or unseen event, usually with extreme consequences. So Tyler Hamilton is concerned with black swans in the energy industry, and those are black swans like Nikola Tesla, those mad scientists who tried and failed, and then essentially they did it so much that, boom, something amazing happened and they changed the world. So awesome that he's a Canadian author, so this Canadian book. Malcolm Gladwell as well is a Canadian author. He actually went to U of T, so woo, represent. And so it's kind of awesome because a lot of the focus is on Canadian energy companies and what they're trying to do, so represent. The problem is that with failures in science, especially in the field of energy, there comes a lot of resentment and pushback. So Hamilton, as he's explaining, with all of the scientific jargon, which is still very cool to learn and to understand, he wants us to remember that the probability for success becomes greater with a greater amount of failures, which may sound a little bit odd, but trust me, like, it all makes sense. But you'll need to read the book to find out why. And the last book that I'm going to present as a read-alike for David and Goliath, I don't have a physical copy because, again, I listened to it as an audiobook, but it's called The Y-Axis by Yuri Gneezy. It's with a G, Gneezy, and John A. List. So all the prior books, except for Grit here, I said was Angela Duckworth's own research, but all the other ones were presenting other people's research. So the difference with the Y-axis is that List and Gneezy are presenting their own field experiments that they did in the field of business and economics, which a lot of people, when they tried to attempt it, were like, oh my God, you can't do that. That's impossible. How? And not in these books per se, but in other Gladwell and the authors of Freakonomics, in their other books, they actually cite the research that's in the Y-axis. So it's quite the foundational book for a lot of the other ones that have come from in the business and economics genre. So John List's experiments, John List and Gneezy, they want to understand what motivates us, and essentially they deem that as being incentives. So again, it's written in the same little stories and anecdotes, however, it's of their own field experiments and with real people. So it's really interesting, this kind of storyline that happens, and they develop these characters who aren't characters. So it's weird, like sometimes you almost feel like you're submerged into almost a work of fiction. It's very interesting. So they attempt to answer questions such as, why do women earn less than men? Why are some people charged more for products than others? Why do people discriminate? And how can nonprofit organizations encourage more people to give back to society? So I think those are pretty interesting questions, but some other people have noted that, like, well, we've been asking those questions for a long time now. Maybe I don't know the answer, but it seems like possibly the answer's already out there. The foreword is actually written by Stephen Levitt, one of the authors of Think Like a Freak, and he rightly states that sometimes the things that should be completely obvious turn out to be the hardest ones to see, and that there was never a truer statement. If you read the Y-axis, you'll be able to find out why. So thanks for listening, guys, and I hope that you enjoy David and Goliath as much as I did, and all of the rest of the books here. So happy reading, and I'll catch you later.